What's up, buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream, the show in which I will, in fact, berate you with my own opinions. However, I'm not some overpaid Hollywood jerk-off living in a bubble, spouting the same nonsense that people have been proving that they hate to listen to. I'm going to give you my opinions on libertarian things and, of course, things on the non-woke spectrum. And I'm glad that you're here to watch me and join me in this cavalcade of misery that results every time Hollywood has a showcase. So welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for joining us here on the Lions of Liberty Network and on Mean Age Daydream. Before we get into things deeply, I do want to remind you, Woke Word Wars, guys, check it out. It's on Amazon, or you go to wokewordwars.com, but we sell everything through Amazon right now. Great game, card game you can play with your friends. It's a lot of fun. And I was thinking, we'll create some special cards just to put for social media. And we've got so many in the deck that are so applicable to the Golden Globes and to what's going on right now. I was just thinking, I just told my buddies who are my partners in the show, I was like, generate a card that says Golden Globes 2026 was blank and blank. And here you go. It was essentially this. It was eating a 12-course meal made entirely of participation trophies, because all of these awards that they're giving out, they're going to all these jerk-off films that people don't really give that much of a crap about, projects that people don't care about, that Hollywood still has an erection for. And, of course, Trump derangement syndrome, because all of these people, starting off with Robert De Niro, who is, at this point in his career, Robert De Niro is a terrible actor. He chooses horrible projects. He's way too old to be believable in anything other than playing a doddering old man. And nobody wants to see him play a doddering old man. He's tried to do it in all these different movies where he's like, oh, he's an old man in a heist. Oh, now he's an old man psychiatrist. Now he's an old man. Whatever it is, no one wants to see it. And because of his political outspokenness and his hatred and derangement syndrome over Donald Trump that has been there since Donald Trump came into the political sphere, he just won't shut up. I was just meeting with a client of mine who does a lot of visual effects work. And they, we were talking about films and how there's been a big problem lately and this is, by the way, throughout all of films, from either the Jurassic Park films through the Marvel films, through the whatever, you got it, you name it, a worsening of visual effects. And these guys do very specialized work, very high quality work. So they don't use kind of the slapdash AI, which is out there now, but a lot of companies are doing it. A lot of hires that they're making in the industry are using this garbage AI that generates visual effects, or fast visual effects they farm out to India, or they film it out to Indonesia, or wherever it might be. They get back garbage product, and then you see it play out. Because it's not just that they're using more visual effects, they're using worse visual effects, worse companies, and they're using it more for everything rather than traditional shooting, which is, by the way, one of the reasons you're seeing skyrocketing costs in the industry. Anyway, point being, we're talking about how films, are movie theaters viable anymore? And you had a lot of the Golden Globes dedicated to, hey, go back to movie theaters. They are still viable. They, without a doubt, are viable. Films like Zootopia 2 is like the highest grossing film ever. Avatar 2 or Avatar 3, whatever garbage Avatar movie we're on, it's tearing it up at the box office. No one gives a crap about it, and no one rewatches these movies ever. I mean, I haven't seen an Avatar movie since the first one, and I watched that exactly one time. Zero interest in seeing the rest of them. However, it proves that people will go to the theater. Maverick tore it up in the theater. Even F1, an IndyCar racing movie did well in the theater because it was, Avatar is very political, but, it's still a spectacle. But good feeling, good fun movies like a Zootopia 2, like a Maverick, like a Formula One movie, Formula One. These films are just good popcorn fare. They're not pushing a political agenda down your throat. And I know Sinners did well in the box office, as opposed to One Battle After Another, which was a flop, by the way, that, of course, was feeded by Hollywood. And people talk about it's the greatest film in the world. I've not seen it yet, by the way. But you had Sinners. It was, I honestly didn't get through Sinners, but it still did well because it was a vampire movie, and horror movies can still cut through. it had some, a lot of aspects of Black culture in there and songs and stuff and action. Great. So that was fun for people to go in there. The reason I didn't finish it was because honestly, I got sick of being lambasted with, Black messaging and what was this time for Black people. I'm just sick of hearing about it, to be honest. But the point is, people are very open to going to the theaters, but they don't want to be dedicating their time and their money to sit down and be preached to. And Hollywood, I thought, was understanding that. Just like the gaming industry, which has taken lump after lump, losing hundreds of millions of dollars, Hollywood is bleeding money because they can't seem to get out of their own way, just like TV. And I talked about this last episode too, in regards to the writing staffs, the projects they're choosing. So you've got this Hollywood, the Golden Globes, where people, by the way, typically drink too much, where Ricky Gervais, remember, was up there telling people specifically that are actors, shut your mouths, stop talking about politics, because nobody wants to hear your stupid, isolated opinion that is, by the way, not in any way well-informed. Patton Oswalt showcased that perfectly when he was on Bill Maher and didn't know half the things that anyone on X knows about because he's living in an insular bubble. These people, like De Niro, who, as I mentioned, hasn't had a decent film in the last 25 years and is a walking joke, they put him up there specifically to give a tirade against Donald Trump. And he does by going up and saying, F Donald Trump. It's not about resistance. F Trump. Good job. Well, way to inspire people, De Niro. Way to deliver a soliloquy. We've proven you can't do that anymore. So why are you going up there and trying this time? Because you can't do it. It was inelegant. It was ineloquent. It said nothing other than to showcase the hatred Hollywood has for Donald Trump and anybody that dares to listen or think like Donald Trump or think that he might have a shot at changing the country. Now, I have a million problems with Donald Trump, and I've talked about Venezuela as one of them, and I'll talk about Iran and that pending decision by the Trump administration towards the end of the show. But I saw De Niro go up there and rail about this crowd. You see all the Palestinian, pro-Palestine stuff. Of course, they're going to be very pro-Israel because there's a lot of Jews in the industry. They're very powerful, right? Acknowledge that. But I saw a Hollywood Reporter article written about these Golden Globes that demanded that these actors did more. It called the Golden Globes, pretending everything was right in the world. Now, Hollywood as an industry is on the ropes. And now these idiots at SAG-AFTRA, the actors unions, they are talking about another strike. This is right as you have AI coming up where people are able to generate AI content that looks realistic. You have AI content that now is licensed to use Disney's characters in it. So you could actually make whole movies, whole TV shows using Disney's IP. We don't need you, actors. So now is the perfect time for them to go on strike again, shut down a ailing industry, and it might never come back. These people are that short-sighted. But I saw this Hollywood Reporter article saying, well, they glanced over that, but also they should have been attacking Trump more. They should have been talking about this and that and the other and climate change. And I'm like, brother, did you learn nothing? You and your ilk get up there and use this as a reason to stump for your political causes, half of which, by the way, have already been proven to be wrong. They are failed causes, demonstrably failed causes, full of fraud, full of abuse, full of nonsense. But you people can never admit when you're wrong. It's always doubling and tripling down and blaming anything else and racism and this and Trump. I mean, at the Golden Globes, you had another cliche of this chick. It's like a Black actress who was in, and amazingly, I don't know what she won the Golden Globe for. Maybe she must have been in Sinners is my guess. But she was also in the Kim Kardashian trash fair called All's Fair, which is we actually reviewed on the first episode podcast, which is the comedy podcast I do where we talk about first episodes of new shows and old shows. We did this Kim Kardashian show that's on like Hulu or Netflix, one of the two. This chick's in the worst show I've ever seen in my life, but she goes up there and goes, this is for all the little brown girls who aren't able to go into places. Like, you're like 22. Are you telling me there's a single place in this world that you've been denied entry to? Because I highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure you see yourself everywhere. In fact, overrepresented if we're talking about statistics in every measurable aspect, right? I referenced the fact that 85% of open jobs in the last year, not more than that, last like 5-10 years, went to non-white candidates, or at least like non-white male candidates. So clearly, quite a bit has been going your way. Talking about representation in Hollywood, the fact that you've got a black family in every single advertisement, in every single movie, when you're 8% of the population, seems like you're over-indexing. Pretty sure everybody's just cool with everybody being everywhere right now. And you're going to go up there and cry, and this is for every little black girl. Like, get the fuck out of here. Shut the fuck up. It's not true. This is an invention of your own mind. It's like people who find racism wherever they're looking because they are intent to do so. You can misread anything and make it into racism if you try hard enough. And that's what these people are doing. I mean, give me a break. Hollywood and the Academy Awards changed everything that was required in Hollywood, where you can't make an indie film anymore that can get Oscars qualification, because if you don't have a diverse cast, if you don't have a gay person and a black person and a Chinese lesbian Eskimo, it doesn't matter. You can't get any recognition. They are demanding mandating diversity. And of course, that leads to far worse products across the board. Far less people being able to do these projects. Not everybody has a budget to do that. You can't always have a talent pool to be able to shoehorn the shit in, but they insist on it. And you have this moron going up there and giving a whole speech about, what are all my people that aren't getting representation? Like, what world are you living in? So on top of that, you also have Ricky Gervais win an award for best male comedic performance because of his stand-up comedy special, I believe, or maybe it was for his. I didn't watch the Golden Globes. I'm just going from reports and clips that I saw online. It was either for his comedy special or it was for his show. I think it's called Afterlife. One or the other. He wins an award, which is shocking, but does go to show you that you cannot deny a certain amount of talent. So Gervais is not there to accept, because why would he go? He's basically been, after he delivered his sermon to these woke imbeciles of Hollywood and the global entertainment community, telling him to shut the fuck up when he hosted it. He basically was like, well, I'm never going back. They're not going to have me. I don't want to go. I don't need to be around these people. So Wanda Sykes apparently accepts the award for him and takes it upon herself as one of the least funny women on the planet, one of the least funny people on the planet. But of course, a lesbian of color. So she's been promoted and propped up and propped up and propped up. And thank God, by the way, she wasn't an elf to ruin that movie, because she was originally supposed to be the black store manager in that film. And instead, the guy who got the part, who is incredibly funny, honestly makes half the scenes in that movie. The funniest scenes in the movie involve him. Thank God Wanda Sykes wasn't in it to ruin Christmas for generations. But she goes up there on stage. And despite the fact that Ricky Gervais is not a transphobe at all, similar to the same way J.K. Rowling is not a transphobe, but just people that acknowledge biology, Wanda Sykes goes up there and goes, I just want to accept this, for transphobe Ricky Gervais. Why? The man just won an award for best actor. Clearly the people in the industry respect him, but you, Wanda Sykes, because you're a garbage eating, unfunny piece of shit whose career is on a severe downturn, you got to go and tear this man up because he's a privileged white man and he's racist transphobe. Okay. That's your problem. That's your worldview. And you can take your fucking politics and keep them out of the way and shove them up your fucking ass. Nobody wants to read, watch, listen, hear this shit anymore. We've moved on. We are a post-racist dialogue, a post-trans dialogue society where we're being told that any opposition to psychotic opinions and programs and waste of money and spending that we're being told we're silenced because of this, or we're wrong and we can't talk about these things. We're past it. But these people don't understand that. You know who understands it? The ratings. Because the Golden Globes is now getting beat by a new cop show, probably The Rookie on NBC, a retread of a retread, and reruns of other things on other networks. 2 million people watched the Golden Globes. one of the biggest nights in Hollywood gets less viewers than a single bad episode of the Joe Rogan podcast. Irrelevant. These people are digging their own grave, embracing irrelevance because their egos and their stupidity cannot allow them to change. It's just unreal. So, an additional comment on woke, stupid, talentless comedians, female comedians specifically, is in the UK, there is a woman who is getting coverage in the Telegraph for apparently going out in there and really, stunning and brave, a comedian named Rosie Jones, who, by the way, looks like Bella Ramsey if Bella Ramsey had put horse dentures in her mouth. I mean, she's very, very ugly. And I try not to make fun of people's physical appearances too much, but she deserves it. When you're this much of a piece of garbage, you deserve it. So she has denounced un-PC comics like Ricky Gervais, and now she's presenting her advice on how to joke responsibly. Pay attention, bigots. And of course, what do you think this asshole is telling people to do? Oh, that's right. To avoid any topic that isn't already in the approved talking points of ultra leftist shitbags. And of course, where is she based? In the UK, where you have censorship of anybody that posts offensive content. You have people getting arrested. It is literally a prison state. They have more people that have been arrested. It's like over 12,000 for speech violations in the UK. And then you have this chick lecturing comedians. Comedians are supposed to be standing up against power, making jokes. The truth of comedy is what makes it funny. That truth that no matter what you say or do or think can break through that kernel of truth that is seated in your mind. Even if you don't agree, you can laugh, though, because once it worms its way in there, and if it's presented properly, you can joke about anything. I don't care what it is, you can joke about it. But this chick, she's calling comedians bigots. You know who are bigots? Leftists are the biggest bigots I've ever met. You have a stat that just came out recently that 40% of people that are quote unquote on the left, Democrat registered technically in this study, would refuse to work with or for somebody that doesn't see their political opinions eye to eye. That is bigotry. You are a bigot. You're intolerant to people that do not share your exact opinions. And what do we see in the UK? This has been mobilized as a crime, as a hate crime, as a state-run censorship operation. And you have this dumb bitch out there telling comedy, you're not allowed to challenge this. You're not allowed to joke about things that I find offensive. And if you do joke about them, well, then I'm going to call the cops on you. So thanks for your advice. I'm going to go ahead and decide to ignore it. I'm going to go ahead, instead of listening to this horse-faced, woke female garbage monster. And I'm going to actually, let me share her visage so you can see exactly what this broad looks like, because she's that bad. Here it is. Here we go. There she is. There she is. Miss Woke Grossy Face. Just, I mean, if you had to ask AI to create somebody that would look like she would be all in favor of censoring comedy, this is exactly what they would make. A liberal with a horse face, obviously very pale white. I'm sure she comes from a very privileged household, as they all do, with a shirt that says love on it and a rainbow telling you how much she hates you and that you're not allowed to think differently. It's truly amazing. All right, let's move on. I do want to talk about and give a little bit of an RIP for Scott Adams. And Scott Adams is interesting. He's an interesting case in cancel culture because Scott Adams, when he did Dilbert, was widely regarded as a genius and widely loved by the left. Why? Because he was poking fun at corporations and the way in which corporate media works and corporations in general work, right? The corporate environment. He was pointing out how evil, how inconsiderate, how financially focused, but still overlooking the talented individuals that are in the workforce, and how soul sucking that corporate environment could be. These are all things that leftists hold dear, right? If you can tear down corporate America, if you can make fun of it, if you can laugh at it and say, my God, yes, how evil, how soul suckingly evil these machinations of these global corporate entities are. We're simply, hamsters on the wheel. Don't they respect the individual contributions of their workers? All right, don't they know the labor value theory, or the theory of God damn, I'm gonna mess it up. Well, fuck it, I'm just moving on. Not gonna go back and say it again 18 times. The labor value of, God damn it, I'm like completely blanking on Marx's phrase right now. I can't put it in my brain in the right order. That's what happens sometimes, folks, when you're busy. Anyway, so the concept that these people would immediately turn on Scott Adams because he dared to be a Trump supporter is not surprising. We've seen it happen time and time again, where if you diverge from that path, you will be attacked, you will be ripped down, you will be demonetized. And that's what we saw happen. Even though Dilbert was never explicitly in any way pro-Trump, in any way deviated from its path of making fun of corporate America and poking fun at little goofy woke things. It is always the same, written by the same man, because he came out and voiced his support for Donald Trump and started talking about the lunacy of the left and the two movie concept, where they're watching a completely different film than the rest of us. He was attacked viciously and dropped from nearly every single newspaper in syndication that he had, which was in the hundreds. Now, granted, a lot of newspapers, because they're woke leftist dog shit, and people have woken up to that fact and have woken up to the fact that corporate media are the enemies of the people for the most part, and that can't be trusted because it's all just an echo chamber of propaganda. A lot of newspapers had cut the comics down substantially. So maybe they were just excited to have a reason, but there was a full-born campaign to take his comedy or take his, comics out of these pages. And not only to take them off the pages, but to get them removed from the websites of the newspapers as well. And this happened to the point where a few years ago, Scott Adams just said, well, screw it. The last syndication company dropped me, so I'm just going to put it online and people can donate if they want, which is what they did. Because Scott Adams, for whatever you might think of him, he was a critical thinker. He made it a point to point out obvious logical fallacies, obvious disproportionate reactions to things, be it in corporate America or in culture, to point out the things that were so overlooked in everyday interactions that were funny or ridiculous or silly or stupid. And the man took that and then, made himself into a very popular podcaster, streamer with his Coffee with a Scott Adams series, which I had been watching regularly until, like everything, I kind of got out of it after a little while. But he was very open to changing his mind. I mean, he would have a lot of debates with people over climate change and changed his mind over that over time. Even on, Trump policies, so much he was for, then he changed his mind on those, go back and forth. But he's willing to take in the information and not simply be blinded by idolatry of the man or of, a specific political spectrum. He always wanted to question that. And I have the utmost respect for him doing that, and also being willing to sacrifice essentially the legacy of what he had worked for, because he could have just shut up and kept quiet. Now, he has FU money. He's a very successful guy, but he could have shut up and just ridden it out and not spoken out, not voiced, his opposition to what was happening and the way our culture was going and the way these leftists have been ruining everything. He instead chose to fight and to take that economic fallout, which was severe. And then you find out that he's also battling cancer. Now, I do wonder, because he was also a defender of the vaccines, I do wonder if there was some aspect of that within the cancers that spread, especially how fast these things can happen. I say this as somebody now who, between my wife and I, have lost two very close friends in this past year to very, very aggressive cancers that came out of nowhere. I do wonder what the connections there are. But I don't want to get distracted too much from the main topic, which is rest in peace, Scott Adams. I hope your legacy continues on as a man who was a genius comedically, a brilliant comedic thinker and critical thinker, somebody that was willing, as I mentioned, to take and dissect our culture from a very intelligent perspective and make it into a digestible comedy format, something that this leftist Josie clearly can't do, nor Wanda Sykes, nor any of these leftists that have lost their senses of humor and are more happy to try to tear successful people down that are capable rather than admit they're wrong or change their tactics. So rest in peace, Scott. All right. Last thing, guys, let's hit on Iran and then we'll call it a day here. And by the way, you'll notice I'm doing this show a little earlier this week. I'm going out of town later in the week, and tomorrow I have back-to-back meetings in the morning, so there's no way to get it done. So you get a little early this week. Hopefully nothing horrible happens with Iran during the next 24 hours, because that'll really piss me off, because it's been nice having a Wednesday recording rather than Tuesdays, because I've missed a lot of things over the years doing Tuesday shows. All right, so couple things about Iran. And also tying in Argentina. So Argentina, by the way, despite all these people cracking down on, and not cracking down, but trying to disparage libertarian and free market economic philosophies, being put into practice in Argentina, the poverty level has been reduced by 50% in Argentina from the latest stats that have come out, which is pretty unbelievable. So that is working. However, it's also on fire right now. And some of these leftist, news outlets are reporting like, oh my God, it's because of the cuts to fire departments. No, it's not. Because now we've got reports coming out saying that, oh, this was arson from Israeli, quote unquote, tourists that have used Israeli munitions, specifically grenades, to set fires, and they're now being detained. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it is very interesting and also very suspicious, because I don't know why Malay's been an advocate for Israel. So I don't know why Israeli tourists are going over and setting fires in Argentina. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. At the same time, you've got fires that are spreading all over Iran in the capital, because apparently the Iranians have finally had enough of the Ayatollah, enough of the dictatorial nature of this theocracy, enough of their people being taken in the night, enough of censorship, enough of being told what they can wear, what they can say, what they can eat, what music they can listen to under this horrible, horrible Islamic law. And I mean, it's been incredible to see the difference between the old videos in the 1970s of Iran, where you have gorgeous women walking around the streets, smoking cigs, having a great old time. It just looks like any other 70s country. And the Islamic horror fest it is now, which, of course, good job, United States of America, in creating the situation that we've had for the last 50 years. But we've got what looks to be a legitimate revolution going on. You've got federal buildings burning. You've got people rioting every single night and tearing things down and not cowing to the government. Now, I'm also hearing that either today or tomorrow, there is allegedly going to be a mass hanging in that country, where the current regime is trying to scare people by making a statement. They're going to take all the people that are arrested and just hang them straight up for treason and for insurrection. We'll see if that happens. If it does, you're going to see bombs drop, and you're going to see the United States go to war with Iran. That's my worry. Now, I don't think that the regime would be that stupid. I think that they are well aware, especially what just happened in Venezuela, that they are on unbelievably thin ice. And what they need to worry about right now is getting their asses out of their country and into some friendly neighboring territory, wherever that might be. Maybe, go over to Russia. I don't know. But, some friendly territory where they can escape and not be killed. Because if you do hang 10,000 people, you are going to see the United States start raining down missiles on every single military facility in Iran, considering the fact you've got the demonstrations right now going on. And by the way, it's pretty amazing and pretty hypocritical that Israel, of all countries, is saying that Iran is violating all of these international standards, and oh my God, the humanity. Israel, who committed a genocide in Gaza and is continuing to do so, just have no shame. But I am of two minds on Iran. It's similar to Venezuela. I am fully in favor of what's going on in Iran right now. However, there are reports that there are, a ton of Mossad agents that are stoking and fire and these flames and leading the charge in these revolts, which I fully believe. But similar to Venezuela, two things that can be true. Number one, I can oppose Israel's influence and what Mossad does 99% of circumstances, and also say I'm super happy that this is happening. And I'm very excited to see if they can overthrow the Ayatollah and get somebody else in there that's actually going to be bringing back a more secular Iran, which I think there's no possible way it can be worse than it is right now, if we're being perfectly honest. Even if, and yes, I know regime change usually results in worse leaders, but when you're talking about a hardcore theocratic Islamic state, I don't see much of a downside in having these revolutionaries get their way and put somebody else in power there. Now, at the same time, I do not want the United States to get involved. Seems to me there's a lot of good stuff going on in Iran right now, and all of these people are rising up. Why don't you just leave them the fuck alone? Let them handle it. It's their problem. You've already got Israel in there, clearly, fanning the flames and running their own operations. Why do we need to go in? Why do we need to get involved in this? Iran is across the world from me. I don't give a shit about them, to be perfectly frank. I don't give a shit about Israel, to be perfectly frank. Let them play it out in their own manner. Let Israel go and help them if they want to help them. Israel's supposedly our greatest ally, right? So we shouldn't have anything to worry about if we allow them to go and operate on their own devices in that country. It certainly seems like things are going to work out just fine. And let's say the Ayatollah wins and they crack down and they hang 10,000 people, right? As we've seen with their own fighting within the terrorist sphere and the insurgent sphere, when you hang 10,000 people, you're going to create 100,000 pretty pissed off people, because every one of their friends, family, relatives, going back generations is now going to be a blood enemy of that regime. And they're just going to bide their time until they can take it down. So pretty much, sorry, it's horrible if that happens. If 10,000 people get hung, okay, horrible, but not my problem. And also still going to be better for the United States, better for that country when it does, because you are going to generate such hatred and an overwhelming urge to kill the people that killed your loved ones by hanging in the streets, that you will see faster regime change than we could ever hope to help. So Trump, lay off, buddy. Lay off. All right. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you for joining me on the show today. Remember, we have all of our shows here at the Lions of Liberty Network, which you can tune into weekly. We're going to be doing a politics, I believe, tomorrow morning, or Thursday morning, sorry. So that will be coming back as well after our layoff over the holiday break. And you can join us at our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And don't forget, Woke Word Wars, guys. Come on, buy the game. It is fun. We just put up a how-to video, too, so if you're confused by how to play it, because it is not exactly a claim or a clone of Cards Against Humanity, by the way, like all these other knockoff shit games are. It's actually a very different game. So watch the how-to. All right. Thank you. Goodbye. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network, and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe. Keep that ray gun to my head. Later.